Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Politics Relaxed podcast. I'm very excited to be joined by obviously Rajan and Daniel. So thanks, and the owner of UK Fact Check Politics, Rustam. Thank you very much for joining us as well.
Thank you. Nice to be on, Felix, Rajan, and Daniel.
Cool. This is going to be more like a discussion. We're going to talk first about the future of the left and the Labour Party as well, because I mean, obviously, your page is left wing, pretty obviously, and I think it's predominantly young people, I'd say, who follow it and are interacting with it. So I mean, it's probably a pretty good place to start. Obviously, I mean, we have to start with Labour. Coming back off 2019, a terrible defeat. I mean, obviously, we now have Keir Starmer. Is he the right man for the job? That's just kind of anybody.
He started off strongly first couple of months. I think he obviously took over a dire situation at the party, and his poll rating started to go up. And he was actually, I think, for 2 or 3 months, he was polling above Boris Johnson. But when we got to the December period, January period, that's when his poll rating started to tank. And I think that's mainly due to the suspension of Jeremy Corbyn, and kind of his like fight against the socialists and the left of the party to like it looks like he's trying to expunge socialism from the party, when he said that he would try to unite the party, because obviously anti-Semitism and the divide within the party were the two biggest issues. So that's why I think his ratings tanked. Is he the man for the job? I would like to put my faith in him, but at the moment, I don't see any way of Labour winning the next election until obviously a new leader comes into place or Starmer's gone. So I'd say he's no way near the the kind of candidate Labour need to win an election, because he sits on the fence a lot. When it comes to opposing as well, there was a lot of times when the Labour Party needed to oppose, he just didn't do anything. He waited until what the public opinion was, and then he said, then he just did nothing, or he moved too late, or he just supported the government. So yeah, I think there's a lot of reasons as well that I'd say he isn't the man for the job. So for example, when he suspended Jeremy Corbyn, this happened all the way back in October 2020, and it's been nearly, I think, 9 months now since the suspension of Corbyn. And he said that obviously the suspension, if people in the party do something that goes against party's values, then there should be like an independent investigation. But the Labour Party just went straight ahead and suspended. He got whip removed, still hasn't been reinstated. I think those are the reasons why I'd say he isn't the man for the job.
Yeah, I mean, I pick you up on the point about like in December, January time when he went down in the polls. I'd put that down to the vaccine, really. I don't think it would Jeremy Corbyn, because October, I mean, the correlation I think is much more direct between the vaccine and poll. Obviously, there are so many factors involved in polling, and you can never truly know. But I think I'd put that one down to the vaccine rollout. I mean, of course, it's really you're almost making a guess, but that would be my suggestion.
The thing is, when obviously the vaccine rollout has been really good, and people say there's been a vaccine bounce in the poll ratings, but if you actually look at it, it's more people have diverted from the Labour Party and they've gone to the Green Party and the Liberal Democrats. So if it was down to the vaccine bounce, you would see Labour voters leaving and going to the Tories instead. But instead, it's been the Labour Party's percentage points being hit, and it's gone to the Green Party, which is very left wing. You could argue socialist, and the Lib Dems, they're just moderate centrists. So that's one thing I'd point out.
Yeah, I mean that of course is true, but to be fair, the Conservatives did also receive that bounce. So I mean, both things can put down to it. Rajan, I'll go to you while Daniel gets to sort.
Yeah, so Keir Starmer, is he the right man for the job? Just watching Sir Keir, I don't see committance and Keir Starmer committing to anything, sort of playing the tentative politician right now. But Felix, do you disagree?
I don't disagree, but what I would say is it the right time to be like, one, it's very hard to get the news coverage. We can all admit that we have a few hundred seats less, or 100 seats less nearly than the Conservatives. It's very hard to get that camera on Keir Starmer. When he does, when he's made these major speeches, they've kind of not done that well viewing wise. Like, they haven't even got primetime TV, a lot of them. So I think it's very hard for him to attack. And in PMQs, to be fair, he absolutely destroys Boris Johnson every week. So I wouldn't disagree. I just think it's a bit more complicated than that. That's what I think. Go ahead. Ben.
Yeah, 100%. I do think that in this time, it is right to probably play like the more tentative. You can't rush with public safety. But I think the problem is that's not what the public, that's not how the public view things. The public will view things, if you're sitting back, then you're not the right man for the job, and that's just the harshness of the situation.
But here's the thing with the tentativeness. Another thing to add on to that is we're in a global pandemic, and we're in a pandemic. We're in a emergency government, you'd probably call it. So it's a very fine line between attacking too much and being too tentative, because there are going to be people who are going to be on the more centrist side of the vote, which we need to win. We need to win the centrist, and we need to win the socialist. And one, that is a very, very hard task. And two, back to my point, is there are going to be people more on the centrist side who say, well, you're attacking the government too much. You're not being constructive. You're instead just attacking them for cheap political points. That's what Boris Johnson said last week at PMQs, and many people say that Keir's not done enough. But Boris is saying, obviously, I don't think Boris is the best person to be listening to, but he said, or was it? I've forgotten what I said now.
It was the lack of he didn't provide any constructive criticisms.
Exactly.
Just
so it's a very
no, but there is a case for that, isn't there? A case that you can't just go bashing the government without saying how you would do things. I mean, that's not the job of PMQs, but it sort of is, because that's your job as the opposition, surely.
Yeah, I mean, this is the key point, right? For me, with Keir Starmer, I don't think he's about, like, leadership-wise, and I don't think he's a bad person. I think he's a very genuine guy, and that is important. But what he lacks is policy and ideas, and that's why I think people like Ed Miliband can push him up in the cabinet. He just released a book, Go Big. It's a very good book. I'm reading it right now, and he's promising these big ideas. Let's get people like Ed Miliband. Let's get people like Zara Sultana. Let's get these people in the Labour Party who are giving you fresh ideas, which are really key, and let's get them in a room with Keir Starmer. And I think at Brighton, Brighton is a perfect opportunity for Keir Starmer. Let's set out some agenda. Let's set out some ideas, and let's go and give them to the public and say, Boris Johnson's doing a terrible job. Let's show them what we can do, what Labour can do, because that is really important, and that's what Keir Starmer does lack.
Yeah, Cameron heard. Cameron heard the Zara Sultana. Yeah, Rustam, go
on. Yeah, I completely agree. Keir Starmer, there's two main issues with Keir Starmer. I don't think he attacks the government enough, and two, it's his policies. If you actually look at poll ratings of YouGov and various other pollsters, it's the main problem with Keir Starmer is that people don't actually know what he stands for. His communication of policy, it's not there. People, if you ask the average Joe on the street, do you name two policies or three policies, main policies of Keir Starmer, they wouldn't be able to do it. And that's like, when I say average Joe, I mean like average, someone who's interested in politics and, reads the news, they wouldn't be able to do it. But if I asked about Jeremy Corbyn, they'll instantly be able to name it. With Keir Starmer, because I don't think he hasn't been given the same, let's say, TV time or screen time because of the pandemic. I think maybe him going on tour this summer, he might be able to communicate his message more clearly, and it might be able to help him. And I hope it does, because obviously you all have one goal, and that's to have a better party in government. One other thing I'd say as well with Keir Starmer, there isn't enough diversity within the party, within the ranks. There isn't. If you look at the shadow cabinet, we only had Rebecca Long Bailey in there. That was the only left-wing socialist MP there, and she got sacked last year, I think in June, because of she retweeted an anti-Semitic conspiracy theory. Other than that, you have great MPs like Zara Sultana, socialist, uh, from an ethnic minority background. She's Muslim. She will resonate with so many voters across the nation, especially with what we saw in Hartlepool. With Muslim voters being disheartened. It will solve so many issues. You have John Trinket, another new socialist MP, who I think is doing a fantastic job for his constituents. So these are the main issues that I think these are the main things that Starmer can do to kind of get the public's approval. And and I hopefully he does do that.
Yeah, I mean, the pandemic is obviously a big point that we haven't really
Yeah.
mentioned yet, and he's not being able to go out and shake hands and give speeches. And let's be honest, he's not even had a real speech yet. He's been standing in front of an
Exactly.
empty room. Can he convey his message to a room? Is going to be a really interesting thing, and if he can, that is a real asset for the Labour Party. If he can convey his message, if he can give a rousing speech, because I think it's very different giving a speech to an empty room and giving a speech to a packed room. They're two very different things. So at the party conference, I don't really know what the arrangements are going to be like yet in terms of social distancing. But if social distancing is gone, then that will be another big question. And there are many people in the north who don't even know who Keir Starmer is yet, and not just in the north, to be fair, but probably more London, because he's based in London at the minute, obviously because of the pandemic. So it's going to be really interesting to see, and really crucial to see what he does on a national stage, because right now he's very much stuck inside his house / London. But we're going to see that change hopefully soon, and that is a good point to mention. I actually respond to your other point there, which is about like diversity within the cabinet. I mean, there's a very clear choice for Keir Starmer to make, and it's, does he do like a 50-50 cabinet with half socialist, half more centrist, or does
Mm-hmm.
he stick with what he has at the minute, which is a pretty centrist, centre left cabinet? And that is an important question, right? Because there are a lot of people who are going to be, as soon as Corbyn's name is even mentioned, they're going to be like, I'm not voting for the Labour Party, and anybody like who've been associated with Corbyn are going to be like, it's going to be hard to bring them in. But that is a big question. I think with Zara Sultana, in terms of cabinet positions, I don't know if I'd go there yet, because she's not been in Parliament that long. One, but that's not the biggest issue for me. It's more she's quite like what's the word? She's very loud and is making, like, which is obviously a great thing. One, but she's a very much like backbencher who's gonna make noise and who is going to like rebel against the party and against the government, and that is fine to have, and that is positive to have within the party. But she's not a safe choice. Let's be clear, she's not a safe choice for cabinet minister. She still could be a very strong cabinet minister, but she's not the safest choice. So I think Keir Starmer at the minute is trying to be conservative, hold back a little bit, and wait till the time is right to release big ideas and be a bit louder and a bit bolder, because he has got to time this to perfection, because he's not going to get that long on TV. He's not going to get that many people's ears. And when he gets those people's ears, he really needs to get his message across, because that is key.
Yeah, I kind of agree. I think maybe pushing Zara Sultan in the shadow cabinet may be a bit too quick, because she has only been in parliament for 2 years. But then again, I think the party, it doesn't have much time until the next general election. I mean, 3 years, yeah, it's a long time, but in terms of politics, it's not. So the party, Keir Starmer has to be radical with his choices, with his decisions, his policies, and it needs to resonate with the public. I think those are the main issues. And I think he needs to unite the left as well, because there are a lot of socialist voters at the moment who have completely turned their face against Labour. They won't vote Labour at all because of the treatment of the left of the party, particularly this last year. And a couple of days ago we saw Starmer expel 4 left-wing groups from the party, which include the Socialist Appeal and the Labour Against Witch Hunt, which obviously a lot of socialists took to offence, and the left of the party as well. So,
No, the only thing we haven't really mentioned yet is the North and Northern voters
yeah,
who have really not been voting Labour in the last general election, the election before, we need to win them back, and it's crucial that we at least win some of these northern seats back. And those are going to be the targets. They must be the targets for Labour HQ, for Keir Starmer. They have to be key and we have to be, like, I think a Green New Deal would be the best option personally to win these voters back. But we have to show the Green New Deal as an economic thing to bring in jobs, not as a climate change thing, even though that is the crux of it. It has to be presented as jobs, especially jobs in the north, and make it having more equality between the north and the south, because northern voters, that is one of their, I mean, at least from what I've heard, from what I've seen, northern voters, it's key that we try to balance out the north-south divide, because that is another issue. And if Labour want to win the next general election, they have to win the northern seats back, at least some of them.
The thing is, with winning the northern vote, the north of England have mostly always voted Labour, and we saw in the last general election where the red wall essentially turned to the blue wall, and I think it's going to be far more complicated than saying to the northern voters, okay, we're going to offer you, you know, leveling up like the Tories have done, which has clearly influenced and persuaded voters to vote for them. It's very persuasive. We're going to level up your town if you vote for us. It's almost like pork barrel politics. We'll give your community funding, billions and billions of pounds of funding if you vote for us. So I think Labour need to come up with a very, very how to phrase this, a very lucrative proposal to the north. Like you said, a Green New Deal. I think that would be very attractive. A massive cause, like a massive surge in jobs in the north, especially because there's poverty rates are high there and unemployment rates are high there. So I think a Green New Deal could potentially do the job.
And actually, we could attack the Tories on their levelling up agenda, their build back better, because there's a lot of talk and not a lot of action. And it's very much like I'd hark it back to Cameron when he promised this big society. It's the same thing. You can throw as many build back betters into your speech as you want, but that's not going to improve life in the north.
Why do you think Hartlepool voted blue? Hartlepool voted blue as they saw the Conservative constituencies next to them, and they saw the developments that were going on there.
They saw the promises. They didn't see the money yet, though. If the money's not there by whenever the next general election is, I don't remember the.
I mean, in Sunderland, we've just opened a gigafactory, which is brilliant. That's part of our levelling up. Haven't you seen that? You say the Conservatives haven't done anything.
Not anything, but it's a lot of talk and not a lot of action. Sure, the gigafactory was good, but it wasn't amazing. It wasn't obviously good and bringing in new jobs to Sunderland. But there's so much more that they've promised. They promised billions upon billions upon billions upon billions of pounds. That's not billions of pounds. That was only millions of pounds. Where's the billions and billions they've promised? It's not there yet. And I mean, they have to get that into the north by the next general election. Otherwise, they're going to lose some serious votes.
I just don't see how the red wall would have fallen by just talk. I mean, obviously,
it's a much bigger problem than that.
But what they saw in Hartlepool, they saw the Conservative councils. They were actually doing the good job. They were doing a good job, and that's why it persuaded Hartlepool to vote blue. Yeah, and it wouldn't have just happened. You can't just turn a red wall seat for 70 years blue just like that. There's actual evidence that has gone into
but it was much much deeper than that, because
100%, yeah.
Like, there are so many things that have contributed to the fall of the red wall. I think it's less about remembering why it fell and more about building it back. And I hate to use building it back because it just reminds me of Boris Johnson, but we have to build back the red wall, and that is so important. And promising a Green New Deal would at least put us there. And another thing you actually do mention, which is a very good point, is locally. What are Labour doing locally? And we have to make sure that our local councils that we already have, and we lost a few of them in the local election. We lost quite a few, and it's very key that Labour councils are doing enough, because then we can build on that with seats. And that.
The thing is, the Tories, I think this has been years and years of planning, with austerity, especially depriving the north of resources. local Labour seats, and then it's like almost they attacked the seats with malice. You deprive the constituent from millions and millions of funding. You provide the funding for your seats in the south, and then obviously constituents, Labour voters see, okay, nothing's happening in our town, and the Tories come up with this new agenda, leveling up fund, and these towns say, look, these other seats turn blue, which was always red, and look how nice the community is turning out to be. Why not vote blue? They
And
vote blue, and now they're getting millions and millions of funding. The Tories are very, very good at pork barrel politics, which I keep mentioning,
and
because it's what they're specialists at it. It's what they do.
and just adding on to that, it's then so they deprive the areas with austerity and or being in power for 10 years, and then they blame it on refugees, on immigrants, and then all they do is point the finger, put Priti Patel's Home Secretary, point the finger at refugees. And well, I feel we've lost, since the Tories have come in, we've lost this empathy, this care, and it's very important that Labour can build on that again, because I feel like people have lost their empathy to refugees, to immigrants, to people who are unemployed, and then the Tories point at them and say they're scrounging off benefits. They're not scrounging off benefits. They're working as hard as they can to get a job. It's a lack of confidence in our country, frankly, and this is the next step of their plan. And then my worry is that the Tories keep attacking refugees, keep attacking scroungers on benefits, keep attacking immigrants, and they keep winning votes in the places where they're so deprived, because they're pointing the finger.
I think with Labour, especially with Starmer's centrist appeal now, they can go for South moderate Tory seats, because most of them are marginal. And you've seen a couple of councils, actually, Cornwall, which has always been Conservative, Cornwall Council in the last local election, it flipped red. And it's something that we wouldn't have seen. And we've seen loads of votes in Southern Conservative seats, always Conservative seats. You've seen them slowly, the majority decrease by a lot. So I think Labour have a real shot in the South if they actually put the time, go canvassing. I think they can win a lot of seats in the South as well as the North.
Yeah, I'll bring in Daniel now, because I know you've been sitting
Sure.
there patiently waiting.
I don't have much to say at the moment, to be honest.
Okay, tell me if you do, because cool. Let's maybe move on to austerity. We don't have too long left, but I mean, that's kind of the next big thing, and we're moving on to it there. I mean, it shifted our politics in this country so much. Austerity, it's ridiculously starting to win seats back, because as we say, they deprived them so much, and then they promised them all this new funding, and that was a very good point. Daniel.
I think at the start, when the recession happened in 2008, I think cutbacks needed to happen. We were in debt, and I think they probably need to happen now. But I think, towards the end of it was, Cameron's.
If they happen now, we're going to have our NHS dangerously, it already is dangerously underfunded. We're going to have no staff. We're going to have no staff. We are going to have over a year. We're already at over a year of backlog of patients. Imagine if we keep defunding the NHS.
Can I do the economics here?
Sure.
Go ahead.
Okay, so
turn to when we spend too much and raise taxes. What are we going to do? Seriously.
Okay.
Where's the whatever 300 million that was promised on the Brexit bus? Because that was
a lie.
It was a lie. So our government was voted on a lie. Well, that's what Boris Johnson has to answer for, because where's that 300 million pounds gone? And then we can put that to the NHS and everything we need.
Right. So the situation economically in 2008, 2010 to now is very different. So in 2010, what we had is a low fiscal multiplier. What that is if you go and invest money into the economy, it's not going to come back with good enough returns. And you could clearly see that because the confidence around 2010 was really, really low. No one was really going and spending money. It was a really, really safe time. That's why you had to make cuts there. Also because of 10-year Treasury yields. If they want to go borrow money from the Treasury, they have to pay a lot more back. So that's why it was the more financially stable option to be saving and cutting then. Now the situation is much different. It is the right time for invest and recuperate. Fiscal multiplier is still quite high, even after the pandemic. We've seen that benefits such as Amazon and like other online services has allowed people to continue spending money. That's why the fiscal multiplier hasn't been affected that much. And also 10-year Treasury yields have been they've been staying very, very low. I think it's below 1% right now. So that's why you can borrow money and you don't have to give it back to the Treasury. You don't have to give as much back as you would have in 2010. So austerity, I would say it was the right option in 2010, and Sunak's invest and recovery is good now. So the right timing and right policies for me.
Yeah, but the problem with Sunak's invest and recovery is it's all being invested to Tory mates instead of the people of this country, which is the big problem. But
I think the Tory mismanagement, the Tory the donor scandal has been horrible. Honestly, I don't. That's basic economics that you don't invest in a firm that has no prior experience in the product they are making. That's basic.
It's not even economics; it's common sense. You don't invest in a you don't invest into a gardening company because your friend owns the gardening company and tell them to make PPE, which actually did happen, and then they come back and say, oh, this is inadequate PPE. Well, what's the point in that? It's stupidity. It's not even.
I'm honestly quite surprised it hasn't caused more of a stir in like the media, and it hasn't caused more of like an uprising. Like that should be an indefensible mistake. Like that should be like you have to go after that. Rustam, by the way, I am a conservative. By the way, I think that Daniel, are you one as well? No. Well, where do your allegiances lie, Daniel?
We don't need to go into that. It's too complicated.
Okay. But yeah. I think the Tory donorship has been terrible. All right.
Yeah, I mean, but the problem with austerity was it went on too long, way too long. It was one point, and it went too deep. And I mean, it obviously. I mean, I agree in some senses. It did. It did have to happen a little bit, and even Labour on their manifesto in 2000 and whatever. I forgot what the election was now. Not good with dates.
They promised the exact same cuts as things.
Not the exact same. But
I mean, it kind of was.
They did say they were going to cut things because in a sense it was necessary, but it also that we could have done like different things. There are different economic plans you can go with, and they could have like added on to austerity, because austerity it was so deep and it was so long that it has really terribly affected our police services.
When did it end?
When did it end? It ended in what 20 whatever Sajid Javid's budget, wasn't it? Was it Sajid?
I mean, I'd say for one, it's personally not ended.
Yeah, I think I agree, because if you actually look at Sunak's new budget, I think he did cut public spending, sorry, by like 17 billion pounds. So there's no specific date I'd say austerity has ended. You know, we're still not sure, because when May was in power, she said we're coming to the end. We'll come towards the end of austerity, and then obviously Johnson took over, and then the pandemic happened. So
yeah. I mean, when I say the end of austerity, I'm referencing the budget when they said it was the end of austerity, because I mean, in a technical sense, it was, and then it's just happened again. So we're in like the second part of austerity, I suppose you call it. There was a little gap, I think, just between kind of the pandemic and that budget. But yeah, obviously it's going on again because the Tories are still in power. So it's affected our police services. We got knife crime going up, especially in London. Crime on the whole is dropping a bit, but that can be put down to the pandemic. People being inside for 2 years. Fire services, of course, were terribly affected, and the main one that I would reference is the NHS. I mean, we can't retain our nurses and doctors because they're leaving elsewhere because we're not paying them properly. I mean, and it's just it's just this kind of mountain, you'd almost say, of Tory mistakes. It's like austerity, the pandemic handling, the NHS is just one part of that mountain, and so many different things, and it's just been a catastrophic failure of leadership the last 10 years.
I mean, you could, since 2010, it was 160,000 nurses have quit the NHS. So obviously you could see that why the NHS hasn't been coping, because I think it was 45,000 to 60,000 beds were also cut. So that's why we've seen, protect the NHS, those type of slogans throughout the pandemic, and why our NHS couldn't cope. I don't think it would have coped a little bit better or maybe longer if we didn't like lockdown. But you can obviously see our NHS is deprived of nurses, deprived of doctors, GPs, funding. A&E times are the longest ever in history recorded. I think it was somewhere between most patients would be seen between 4 to 5 hours in A&E back in 2010, but now it's anywhere between 8 to, most patients will be seen between like 6 to 10 hours now. Or we have the largest waiting list now. I think it's 13.5 million people on the NHS waiting list, the largest ever. Obviously, a lot to do with the pandemic, but even prior to the pandemic, there was like the waiting list was the most it was the highest recorded in history even before then. So there's austerity has caused a lot of problems, and you could even say it's directly related to or indirectly related to the rise in crime throughout England.
The rise in homelessness, the rise in food bank uses. Exactly. There's so many different things. I saw a really interesting poll from the Royal College of Nurses. I think it was 30% of nurses want to quit the profession within the next 12 months. I think it was COVID burnout and pay were the two main issues because of that. And the fact is, like, it's disgusting how they treat our NHS staff. The amount of hours they have to work compared to the amount of pay they get. And actually, if you look at the statistics, we have one of the lowest population to doctor, population versus doctor. Yeah, and austerity, it affects every single little bit of our society, and it's every single part of it. From your bins being collected, from like if we send soldiers overseas, everything comes back to austerity because everything was affected nearly every bit of society was affected by austerity, and everybody will come into contact with the effects of austerity, whether it be the homeless person you see when you walk past the tube, whether it be like the queues outside of food banks. It's endless, the amount of effect it's had on British society and especially English society. I mean,
I think the Tories almost became obsessed with cuts, with austerity. I think you could say it became extreme austerity, 7 years. Even economic professors have said that maybe austerity was the wrong approach to take to the, financial crisis. Well, we could have cut for maybe 2-3 years, but then it just kept on happening. I think the Tories are obsessed with having the levels of debt in the country below 100% of GDP, which we've seen countries like Italy or Greece, when they went above 100% of GDP, their economies crashed, it tanked. They needed to be bailed out by the European Union. We've seen the economic severity in the countries, for the last decade now, Greece and Italy especially, when they went over the 100% GDP debt mark. I think that's what the Tories were mainly obsessed with, and that's why they kept cutting and cutting.
Which is really important. We don't want, we don't want another Greece in our country, do we? So I think, austerity was needed. I don't
in a sense,
really get it.
In a sense. I mean, but the fact is it was too deep for me and it was too long. And the thing that exemplifies the Tory government was when George Osborne announced the cut in corporation tax, I think it was. That was just the worst thing. It really hit me here. It was disgusting, despicable.
I think from an economic point of view, it's basic economics. They thought, if you cut corporation tax, there'll be more investment into the economy, more jobs, and obviously the fiscal multiplier, there's a huge fiscal multiplier effect. But yeah, I think with austerity, it was 100%. It was too extreme. It caused 130 indirect deaths. So yeah, it was terrible.
Yeah, 130,000, I think you would say.
Mhm.
Yeah. Anyway, thank you everybody. The meeting's about to run out, so thank you everybody for coming and discussing this. It was a really interesting discussion. A special thank you to Rustam and Daniel, obviously, and Rajan. Thank you for watching. Cheers.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Thank you.